Hello and welcome to this week's Mindful Monday. My name is Allison Knight and I am the health coach for Employee Health Center. Today we are going to talk about recognizing aversion. There are many different ways that we can react to unpleasant and uncomfortable feelings. This may include bracing in the body or tightness, tense body parts. It might include going back to a negative past experience or thinking about all the possible negative scenarios that could happen, or being so caught up in our head that we are going through the motions and not really paying attention to what we're doing. Last week, I talked about doing the unpleasant experiences calendar. In the past, we had done a positive or pleasant experiences calendar. And I want you to take a minute to reflect on what you possibly wrote down, or maybe you just kind of thought of an experience, and thinking about how am I reacting to certain situations and unpleasant feelings that are happening to me. After taking a moment to think of a negative experience or a negative and unpleasant emotion that you might have felt, thinking about that and the things that I mentioned, the bracing in the body, the going back to the past, thinking about all the negative things that could come up, that is aversion. Aversion is basically trying to get rid of, to ignore, not to face, or block out a negative feeling or situation. Unfortunately, aversion is that driven doing mindset, and it causes us to be tangled up in those negative and unpleasant emotions such as depression, anger, stress, and anxiety. By doing that unpleasant experiences calendar, you can see and reflect on how you relate personally to certain situations and negative emotions and feelings. And you can find that there are two crucial steps. First step is that an unpleasant feeling or emotion or situation arises. And the second step is that your mind reacts to that unpleasant feeling by trying in one way or another to avoid that unpleasant feeling and thing that's causing that unpleasant feeling. Most often than not, those two steps are rolled into one, and we don't really see them as two separate steps. But we can take a powerful step forward and free ourselves from this negative emotions vicious cycle by realizing that they're two separate steps. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about the first step. We are going to experience unpleasant situations and feelings forever. You might actually be feeling some of those unpleasant feelings and emotions right now with everything going on with the shelter at place, stay at home. You might have lost your job, you might have hours cut, you might be working from home and trying to balance life with your children. Unfortunately, that is out of our control. That unpleasant experience, that unpleasant feeling, that's something we can't control. But what we can control is our reaction to it, and that is where step 2 comes in. We can release that vicious cycle of being stuck in this aversion cycle with feelings that we don't feel like we want to be tied to. We can break that. We have the control over that. By separating out these two steps and by looking at that unpleasant experiences calendar, we can then unlearn the habit of avoiding and disconnecting from those unpleasant feelings. Because as we talked about in the past, avoiding and not facing unpleasant feelings can then spill into all emotions, and we might not be experiencing those positive emotions to the full extent that we could be as well. Now, in the past, aversion and stress are similar. In the past, aversion and stress was built to help us get out of a dangerous situation, an external situation of being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, for example, that fight or flight instinct, that get myself out of this situation. Now, however, very much of our stress and our aversion is internal, it's not external. And so we have to get out of our own head. We have to relearn, retrain our brain on how to recognize that aversion and stop that vicious cycle. So it's not just those thoughts, though, those negative thoughts that cause this emotion, but that negative state of mind that causes those thoughts to arise is also something that we react to negatively. So by learning what our tells are, our reaction to certain unpleasant feelings and emotions. That's how we can help train and retrain our brain to avoid the aversion. If we can see our negative states of mind for what they really are, we can see them less personally, react with less aversion, and we can change the ways that we react to that state of mind, let it pass, and prevent ourselves from getting stuck in it even further. Next week, we're going to be doing a sitting meditation on the mindfulness of breath, talking about focused attention and spacious attention, and sitting meditation focusing on physical discomfort, because that's what a lot of us end up feeling with that aversion. To finish up today, though, I wanted to go back to something we did last week. We did that 3-minute breathing space, which again, in mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is probably the most important practice because it's something that you can do virtually anywhere, and it's a very short practice. So again, I want you to get seated somewhere, sit up tall, erect, dignified posture, but not stiff. And the first thing I want you to do is to become aware. Become aware of your current experience. Think about, what thoughts am I having? What's going through my head right now? What feelings am I feeling right now? Unpleasant or unpleasant, pleasant or unpleasant? And what body sensations am I having right now? Do you have any tightness or bracing in your body? Any uncomfortableness? Maybe you feel lightness. And then I want you to regather. And now remember, the regathering portion of this is to focus on that breath, focusing on your in-breath and your out-breath. All you're doing is using your breath as an anchor and focusing on it. If you feel like this is difficult, remember that you can simply place your hand on your abdominal wall to help you really feel the filling of your abdominal cavity as you breathe out, and feel it deflate as you inhale. Just do that a couple times. Breathe in, breathe out, and finally expand your awareness. Now we're not just focusing on the breath, but we're focusing on the body as a whole. We are really feeling the sensations of everything, including your posture, any body sensations you are feeling, breathing into them as best you can. And then when you breathe out of them, allowing them to soften. It might also include facial expression, tightness in your jaw. A good way to help relieve that is simply by opening it, closing it, and you might not even know how much tension you were holding in that jaw. But we've expanded that awareness to our body as a whole. We're using that breath to anchor ourselves once again and bring us back to the present. And remembering that this is something that you can use every day, anywhere, to help yourself prevent that aversion, prevent those feelings and body sensations. Thank you so much for joining me. We will see you next week, and I hope that you have a wonderful and mindful Monday.